In March 2023, China and Brazil signed a trade agreement. You probably didn't hear about it. Most people didn't. But that signature did something the US military couldn't prevent. It allowed the world's largest exporter and one of the largest commodity producers to trade with each other without using a single American dollar. Not a sanction, not a tariff, just opted out. And they're not alone. Right now, across boardrooms in Beijing, Moscow, Riyadh, and New Delhi, a quiet rebellion is underway. Not against American culture, not against American technology, against the dollar itself. And if they succeed, the United States will lose the most powerful weapon it's ever had, one it never had to fire. This is the story of how America's greatest advantage became its greatest vulnerability. Let's start with a question most people never ask. Why does the world use dollars? Not for American goods. China makes more of those now. Not because it's the strongest currency. The Swiss franc is more stable. Not even because of trust. Half the world despises US foreign policy. The world uses dollars because it has to. Here's why. After World War II, the US made a deal with Saudi Arabia. You sell oil in dollars, we protect your regime. Simple, brutal, effective. That deal turned every oil-importing country on Earth into a forced buyer of US currency. You want energy? You need dollars first. This created something economists call the Petrodollar system. But that term makes it sound optional. It wasn't. If you're Japan and you need oil, you can't pay Saudi Arabia in yen. You have to convert your yen into dollars first, buy the oil in dollars, and then Saudi Arabia takes those dollars and often reinvests them in US Treasury bonds, which funds the US government. Notice the loop? Every country needs energy. Energy costs dollars. Dollars flow back to America. America prints more dollars. Repeat. This system gave the United States a superpower no empire in history ever had: the ability to print the world's reserve currency. Which means the US can run massive deficits, fight wars on multiple continents, borrow trillions, and never worry about a debt crisis the way Greece or Argentina does, because the debt is in dollars and America controls the printer. But there's a darker side. That same system turned the dollar into a weapon. When the US doesn't like what you're doing, it doesn't need to invade. It just cuts you off from the dollar system. Suddenly, you can't buy oil, can't access global banking, can't trade with most of the world. This is what happened to Iran, to Russia, to Venezuela, to North Korea. The technical term is sanctions. The practical term is financial strangulation. And for decades, it worked, because there was no alternative. But that's changing. February 24th, 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. Within days, the United States and Europe unleashed the most aggressive financial sanctions in modern history. They freeze Russia's central bank reserves, over $300 billion, gone. Not destroyed, just locked, inaccessible. They kick Russian banks out of SWIFT, the global payment messaging system that moves money between countries. Essentially, they severed Russia from the financial internet. The message was clear: step out of line and we'll erase you from the global economy. And it worked. Kind of. The ruble collapsed. The Russian stock market cratered. Western economists predicted Russia's economy would implode within months. But something unexpected happened. Russia didn't collapse, it adapted. Within weeks, Russia and China expanded an alternative payment system. Russia began selling oil to India at a discount, paid in rubles and rupees. Turkey became a middleman. The UAE looked the other way. Even some European countries, desperate for energy, found creative workarounds. The sanctions hurt, but they didn't kill. And more importantly, they sent a message to every other country watching. If the US can freeze $300 billion of Russian assets, what's stopping them from freezing yours? China heard that message loud and clear. So did Saudi Arabia, India, Brazil, the UAE. Suddenly, the same system that made America powerful started to look like a trap, a system where your wealth, your reserves, your trade, all depend on Washington's approval. And that's when the world started looking for exits. Here's what most people miss. De-dollarization isn't one event. It's 1,000 small decisions that add up. Let's walk through them. In 2015, China launched the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, or CIPS. It's basically China's version of SWIFT, a way to move money internationally without touching the dollar system. At first, Western analysts laughed, called it a toy. But by 2023, CIPS was processing over $12 trillion a year, and it's growing. Then there's the yuan. For years, China tried to internationalize its currency, offered yuan-denominated loans to developing countries, built currency swap agreements with dozens of nations, pushed commodity traders to accept payment in yuan. It was slow, until it wasn't. In 2023, China brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, two countries that hated each other, and part of that deal involved energy trades settled in yuan. Saudi Arabia, the cornerstone of the petrodollar, now accepting yuan for oil. That's not a headline, that's an earthquake. Meanwhile, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, started talking about a shared currency. It sounds far-fetched until you realize those 5 countries represent over 40% of the global population and a quarter of global GDP. Even if they don't create a common currency, the fact that they're trying tells you everything. They want out. And then there's gold. Central banks around the world are buying gold at the fastest pace in decades. China's central bank, Russia's, Turkey's, even Poland. Why? Because gold can't be frozen, can't be sanctioned, can't be printed into oblivion. It's the ultimate hedge against a dollar-dominated system. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The U.S. response to all of this has been sanctions, more sanctions, threats of secondary sanctions. But every time the U.S. weaponizes the dollar, it gives other countries another reason to leave. It's like a store owner who keeps banning customers. Eventually, those customers build a new store. Let's talk numbers. The U.S. national debt is over $34 trillion. The deficit this year alone will be close to $2 trillion. How does America afford this? Because the world keeps buying U.S. Treasury bonds. And the world buys U.S. Treasury bonds because they need dollars for trade. But what happens when they don't need dollars anymore? Here's the nightmare scenario. Let's say over the next decade, 20% of global trade shifts away from the dollar. Not to one alternative, just diversifies. Some yuan, some euros, some rupees, some gold, some digital currencies. That means 20% less demand for dollars, which means 20% less demand for U.S. Treasury bonds, which means the U.S. government has to pay higher interest rates to attract buyers, which means the cost of servicing the debt goes up, which means either massive spending cuts or massive tax increases, or the Federal Reserve prints money to cover the gap, which causes inflation. None of those options are good. And here's the kicker. The U.S. can't stop this with military force. You can't invade a currency trend. You can't bomb a trade agreement between Brazil and China. The tools that made America powerful in the 20th century, military bases, aircraft carriers, nuclear weapons, are useless here. This is a different kind of war. One fought in central bank vaults and commodity exchanges and digital payment rails. And the U.S. is losing ground. Now, before we spiral into doom, let's be clear about something. The dollar isn't collapsing tomorrow. Despite everything we've discussed, the dollar still represents about 59% of global foreign exchange reserves, down from 71% 2 decades ago, but still dominant. The euro is second at around 20%. The yuan, just 3%. So why isn't everyone rushing to dump dollars right now? Because there's no perfect alternative. The yuan isn't freely convertible. You can't just trade it anywhere, anytime. China's capital controls make it risky for international reserves. The euro is better, but the eurozone has its own problems: aging population, energy dependence, political fragmentation. Gold is stable, but you can't pay for imports with gold bars. It's not practical for daily trade. Cryptocurrencies are volatile and unproven at scale. So for now, the dollar remains the least bad option. But here's what's changed. It's no longer the only option. And once countries have alternatives, even imperfect ones, the psychology shifts. Think of it like this. You're in a bad relationship. You don't leave immediately, but you start keeping your own bank account, making your own friends, planning an exit. That's what de-dollarization looks like. Not a dramatic breakup, a slow separation. And the US is running out of ways to stop it. Sanctions used to be a precision tool. Now they're used so often they've lost their sting. And for decades, it worked. The US used to be the world's largest creditor. Now it's the largest debtor. It used to be the world's manufacturer. Now it's the world's consumer. The leverage is shifting. And once it shifts far enough, the incentives to stay in the dollar system weaken. Let's game this out. Scenario 1. Managed decline. The dollar slowly loses its reserve status over 20 to 30 years. Global trade diversifies into a multipolar currency system. The US remains powerful, but not dominant. Living standards adjust downward. The government can't deficit spend like it used to. Social programs get cut. Infrastructure degrades. Not a collapse, just a long, slow decline into being a normal country. Scenario 2. Sudden shock. A major crisis, war, financial panic, political chaos triggers a rapid sell-off of dollar assets. Treasury yields spike. Inflation surges. The Federal Reserve is forced to choose between saving the currency or saving the government. In this scenario, the US faces the same fate as every other empire that printed its way into irrelevance. Scenario 3. Digital reset. The US launches a central bank digital currency, regains control over the payment system, forces compliance through technology. Other countries do the same. We end up in a world of competing digital currencies, each controlled by a government. The dollar might survive, but privacy doesn't. Which scenario happens depends on decisions being made right now, in Washington, in Beijing, in Brussels, in Riyadh. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most Americans have no idea this is even happening. They see debates about inflation, about the debt ceiling, about interest rates, but they don't see the deeper story. That the entire economic model of the United States, borrow cheap, spend big, export inflation, depends on the world continuing to use dollars, and the world is slowly opting out. So where does this leave us? The United States built the most powerful economic system in history, a system where it controlled the money, the rules, and the consequences. But power has a cost, and the cost of wielding the dollar as a weapon is that everyone else is now building weapons of their own. De-dollarization isn't a conspiracy. It's not a coordinated attack. It's just rational self-interest. If you watch the US freeze $300 billion of Russian assets, why would you keep your reserves in dollars? If you watch the US print trillions during COVID, why would you trust dollar stability? If you watch the US sanction countries for political reasons, why would you make yourself dependent on the dollar system? You wouldn't. And that's the trap. The more America uses the dollar as leverage, the more countries want out. The more countries want out, the weaker the dollar's dominance becomes. The weaker the dominance, the less leverage America has. It's a slow-motion unraveling. And the worst part? There's no easy fix. The US can't force countries to use dollars. It can't make the yuan fail. It can't sanction its way back to dominance. All it can do is watch as the system it created, slowly, quietly, inevitably, evolves beyond its control. So here's the question nobody wants to ask. What does America look like when it can't print its problems away? We're about to find out.